back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Back to betting on the fights with fake money, where we take a big L. Another week in a row. Holy smokes, we went from our highest high back down to where we started at. I don't think we're at our lowest low, but either way, 2 weeks in a row of L's. Hopefully we can get back to the winning track this week. This is episode 19. If you're new here, we started off at $500, and if we lose every bet this week, we will actually be back at $500. But let's get back to the beginning because I just spoiled my bets for this week. But we're going to get back to the beginning of this real quick because we got to go through our L from last week. So walk with me. This was last week's bets. All right, we started off at $970 last week, and we bet on one Bellator fight and all of the main card UFC Charlotte fights. Now we started off at $970 and we placed $350 in bets, which means if we were to lose every single bet that week, we would still go down to $620, and as you can tell from the spoiler, we lost every single bet that week. Now you can see the bets right there. Kendall Grove, $50 in the Bellator fight. He was an experienced veteran, Bellator and UFC veteran, fighting a guy in AJ Matthews that was on a 4-fight losing streak. And Kendall Grove himself is at about a 500 record. I mean, these guys' records, as far as that's concerned, is pretty even. But I just went with the more experienced Kendall Grove, and he ended up losing via unanimous decision, I believe. So that was $50 down the fake drain. And then we went to Gregor Gillespie versus Jordan Rinaldi. Now you can see I picked Gregor Gillespie to win the fight, but the odds were, Jordan Rinaldi was like a 4-to-1 underdog, and also he was at home, so I was like, hey, it's worth throwing just 50 there because if you win, pretty big win. So with that being said, our prediction was right, which means our bet was wrong. Another $50 down the fake proverbial drain. Now Bermudez, okay, just fake drain, we'll just keep it there. All right, Dennis Bermudez, I picked him to win his fight versus Andre Fili. Some people believed he won, some people didn't. I picked Bermudez and I bet 50 fake dollars on him, and I actually thought Andre Fili won the fight. So I mean, you can take that for what it's worth, but we lost another 50 fucking bucks, third fight in a row. Then we bet $200 on Derek Brunson, who was low-key an underdog in this fight. I believe, yeah, he was an underdog in this fight, and I predicted him to win. So it was like, hey, Derek Brunson's got, he has what it takes to win this fight, as far as he's one of the top middleweights in the world. And Jacare is, what, like 38, 39 years old, even though he's one of the best middleweights in the UFC or in MMA. As far as I'm concerned, Jacare was coming off of a loss, hadn't fought in a while. Derek Brunson, he lost to Anderson Silva, but it was controversial. Then he knocked out Lyoto Machida. So, I mean, I picked Derek Brunson to win the fight, and he got knocked out again by Jacare. This was a rematch. Jacare knocked him out the first time in the first round, and he knocked him out the second time in the first round. It took him 3 extra minutes, but he got the job done via head kick, followed it up with some TKO, and we took our biggest loss of the night in the main event. Derek Brunson went down, which means for the first time ever in our fake money career, we lost every single bet. Now that takes us to how much did we win? Oh, fucking a big $0. Yeah. So we went down to 620 bucks. Now we'll move back to this week's fights. This week's fights we are having, UFC Belem, main evented by Lyoto Machida and Eryk Anders. And now I'm not going to be going bet crazy. I'm actually only betting on 2 of these fights. I mean, I would like to bet on John Dodson, as he's one of my favorite fighters. And I also believe maybe one of the most underrated fighters. He's not one of the most, people know about John Dodson, but he doesn't get the respect I believe he deserves, maybe even just from the judges or some of the fans even. I mean, John Dodson, before his last 2 arguable split decision losses at bantamweight, his only 2 losses in his entire career were to Demetrius Johnson at 125 pounds. Now he said he's not going to go back down to 125 pounds ever because the weight cut. But even at bantamweight, John Dodson is arguably 4-0. He's got a loss to Marlon Moraes and I believe Rafael Assunção, and they were both super super close, and I believe John Dodson won both of those fights, but the judges didn't. So he didn't get his hand raised, which put those other 2 blemishes on his career, both of them via split decision. So with that being said, John Dodson, he's 2-2 now at bantamweight, fighting Pedro Munoz, who's definitely I think he's the number 14th ranked bantamweight if I'm not mistaken. Submission artist. Pedro Munoz could definitely win the fight. And usually whenever you're really close to putting money on a fight and you don't know if you should, when you end up doing it, that's when you end up losing it. So I don't even want to jinx the fight. So I would have maybe put $50 on John Dodson here, but I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to put $50 on Timothy Johnson, who I predicted to win the fight, and he's also an underdog, who's fighting Marcelo Golm, who is like, honestly, you know what? Since we're doing this together, family, I'm putting another $50 right here on my boy, Timothy Johnson, because I looked at Marcelo Golm's record, and even though he's a young heavyweight, he really hasn't fought anybody on Timothy Johnson's level. So since Timothy Johnson is the underdog, I'm putting $100 on Timothy Johnson, which means we have to take away another 50 up here, which means this goes down to 450. Excuse me, family, there we go, you see me. All right. So I'm going to put $100 on Timothy Johnson. And when I did my predictions, I honestly expected Timothy Johnson to be the favorite coming into this fight. So I'm a little surprised he's the underdog if you look at Timothy Golm's short record and his opponents. But it could just be because of his youth to Timothy Johnson. Maybe they're going with youth here. But Timothy Johnson's got the experience, definitely, and also the resume. So I'm going with Timothy Johnson. Valentina Shevchenko coming into this, I was like, yo, however much money I have left, I'm betting it all on Valentina Shevchenko. Now, the only reason I didn't do that is because you can see from the odds over here, Valentina Shevchenko is a -1,000 motherfucking favorite, 10-1. You would have to bet $100 on Valentina Shevchenko to win 10. You would have to bet $1,000 on Valentina Shevchenko to bet 100. So I could bet 450, sure, in order to win 45 more bucks, which is probably worth it, because I do believe Valentina Shevchenko will win this fight. She was having a hard time just even finding an opponent to sign on the dotted line to fight her at 125 pounds, and she found undefeated Priscilla Cachoeira, who's making her UFC debut. But whew, Valentina Shevchenko is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet, man. This isn't even like Joanna Rose. Rose is a skilled, UFC veteran. She's very talented. This is a whole different level. Of course, this is MMA, and I want to say anything can happen in this fight. But if Valentina Shevchenko loses this fight, it's going to change everything we know about MMA. Now, John Dodson already talked about for a second. I would like to bet on John Dodson, but I'm not going to do it. And then Lyoto Machida is a pretty big fucking underdog coming into this fight. I predicted him to win. This was a toss-up for me as far as my prediction is concerned. I mean, I was originally leaning toward Eryk Anders, but then it was like, man, Eryk Anders, as far as his jiu-jitsu and his striking is even concerned, he's probably got, he still needs a lot of time to get to Lyoto Machida's level, but he is going to have the wrestling and probably, the explosiveness, the athleticism. He's a former football player, so he's got a chance at just dominating Lyoto Machida. Maybe Eryk Anders will get Herb Dean in there, who will let him kind of just lay on Lyoto Machida if he gets him down, kind of like he did with Stipe and Francis. But if he gets I feel like if Eryk Anders gets a referee that, makes him pick up the action. I mean, because in Eryk Anders' last fight, we saw him, he took his opponent down multiple times, but he couldn't figure out how to get a choke off or anything like that. And he kind of even had to be careful with the ground and pound because his opponent, might have been able to stand up. I don't know. Lyoto Machida's definitely older, coming off of a suspension and getting knocked out by Derek Brunson. There's a lot of reasons to pick Eryk Anders in this fight, but at the same time, Lyoto Machida is a legend of the middleweight division and a legend of the sport. So I'm just going to rock with Lyoto Machida, who is an underdog. Put the 70 skippers on Lyoto Machida. So we're going to bet a total of $170, which means if we lose both of these bets, we'll go down to $450. Man, we had a bad week last week, but it is what it is. It's all fake money, so if we win, it feels good, and if we lose, who gives a shit? With that, it is what it is, man. Let the full-time family know what you're thinking about this in the comments. Hopefully we have a better week than last week, and even the week before. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.